Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Good Enough Chats. My name is Dan Boucher and I'm the host and producer of the show. Before we jump into this conversation, I want to give you a quick heads up about some of the things we're going to be covering. So in this episode, I'm joined by Martin Lathbury. Martin is in his mid-30s now, lives in London, and he talks about the experiences that he felt from his childhood onwards about being othered. He's a gay guy, and from an early age, he felt isolated and different from those around him. And this has kind of led him on a path of some really tricky mental health challenges over the years. He's experienced anxiety. He's experienced depression. He's retreated into isolation. And this conversation is all about shining a light on that experience to help other people. Yes, it's difficult to hear, as all of these conversations are, but that's why they're so important. And he very kindly shares some of the things that he has learned about himself along the way that might be useful for other people who find themselves in a similar situation. It's a great conversation. It's a great chat. He's a really interesting man. He's got loads of interesting stuff to say. So without further ado, let's jump straight into it. Hi, Martin. How are you doing?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. I'm very good. We'll pull the curtain back for the benefit of the listeners and the viewers. Thank you for your patience during the instability of my internet connection at the start of this recording. I do appreciate it. Martin, please, for the benefit of our audience, could you introduce yourself? Could you go with name, what you do for a living, age, where you live, and because it's you, your favourite ever video game?
Okay, so going through the list. So my name's Martin, 35. I was about to say 34, but I just turned 35. I live in London, southeast London to be specific, because it's the best part of London. And I'm a social media professional. I'm I work as a head of social. And favorite video game of all time. I think I'm gonna have to go. It's really close. I'm gonna go Stardew Valley, but the very, very, very close second is The Witcher 3.
Right, so I'm familiar with the second one. The first one I'm not at all. In 30 seconds, explain that to all of the other noobs that don't know what it is.
Stardew Valley is a farming sim. It's pixel art. It's very much inspired by the old Harvest Moon games, made by a single developer, Eric Barone, also known as Concerned Ape. He made it all himself in 4 or 5 years, everything from the art to the coding to the music. And it's a very cozy, heartwarming farming simulator about escaping the drudgery of a job in the city and taking over your grandpa's farm and making it a success. And you get to know the townspeople, you get to complete missions, there's a bit of magic and mystery going on. It's the perfect game.
Excellent. Okay. So the reason for our audience, the reason I'm asking Martin that is because I also happen to know that Martin is a big fan of retro gaming. And we've actually known each other for years. We kind of worked together. Martin was at an agency that I worked with when I was back in corporate life. So that's how our paths initially crossed. And then we kind of spoke to each other more recently about Good Enough Chats. And that leads me into that first question, Martin, which is, why are you here today talking about your lived experiences of mental health?
I'm here to talk about my own experiences because I've had many experiences with my own mental health, and I think it's really important for men specifically to get more comfortable talking about their own mental health. I think very much from an early age, we are programmed, willingly and unwillingly against, being honest about our feelings. And I think it has caused a real issue in our society, and how it's contributed to the way the patriarchy operates. I think, in kind of like really basic terms, the world would be a better place if men just learn how to like say what they were feeling and be a little bit more vulnerable. So yeah, that's kind of one of the reasons why I wanted to come on today.
Yeah, awesome. I really appreciate that. And I know your story is going to be super relevant to lots of people. And we'll unpack that in more detail in a little while. But before we jump into kind of your story, how has your last week been?
My last week's been great, actually. My last week has been really good. I was a best man at my friend's wedding at the weekend. I got a new job offer, which I'm really excited about. I went to therapy. I chilled at Brockwell Lido. Talking earlier about retro gaming, I recently just bought. I got rid of mine years ago and I've regretted it ever since, but I recently just rebought a PS2 and I've been playing the old Lord of the Rings games on it. And that's brought me so much joy this past week. So I'm doing great right now. I'm in my happy place.
That's fantastic. My on that last point, my only equivalent of that is sort of tinged with a degree of disappointment, which is I have a Switch, and through the Switch Online membership, I've got the N64 online games access, and I got it so that I could play GoldenEye because that's what I played a lot of at uni.
Yeah,
it's just dire. It's awful on the Switch. It doesn't work at all. Not getting any of those vibes.
Surprised.
Such a disappointment.
That's it. Yeah, I'm not surprised, and I had to go for those two games first because, like you were saying, I'm very much into retro games, but I have a real specific fondness and love for licensed retro games. Obviously, we all know about classics like Tetris, Mario, Pokemon, but there was a period around the Game Boy Color and PS2 era of consoles where every TV show, movie, cartoon had a game that they were made. So whether it's Buffy the Vampire Slayer or Sabrina the Teenage Witch on Game Boy Color to like Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter on PS2, I love those types of games because they're so weird and some of them are god awful, but they are also really fun and a real snapshot of kind of pop culture at that time. So yeah, that's why I love them so much. They're definitely kind of like my comfort zone for sure.
Yeah, awesome stuff. Thank you for that. So last week's been fantastic by your review there, which is brilliant to hear. And I think that the reason I asked that question of my guests is because I think it's really important for guys that haven't necessarily started to deal with some of their mental health challenges properly. It's important for them to understand that because you feel crappy now, it doesn't mean you're always going to feel crappy. But also, just because you've had a good week, it doesn't mean that you're not going to feel crappy again. It's just this. It's important for people to understand it's not just this linear progress that you make as you're going on that journey.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I never want to be one of those people that's always just like, well, my therapist says. However, my therapist does say that it isn't a linear journey. I was saying to him, I was like, it feels like with all the stuff I'm dealing with, it's like climbing a mountain, and it just feels very daunting at times. And he says it's exactly like that. And there'll be times where you make amazing progress up the mountain, and there'll be other times where you're just chilling at base camp for a while. And I feel like that's a really good way to look at it because it isn't linear. You're not going to get better and better and better every week. But what you do when therapy is not for everyone, it works great for me, but what you do when you start working on your own mental health, you get more of an idea and more of a kind of education and understanding around your own behaviors and whether they're behaviors or their triggers, your kind of like learned experiences you've used as your coping mechanisms. Sometimes they can be bad. You learn to get more of an understanding of those. And when you understand them more and where they come from, you're much better equipped to learn how to kind of curtail them when when you need to. So for example, I can go into kind of like hermit hibernation, isolation kind of mode sometimes. And my partner, he's going to be away in Edinburgh next week for a big TV festival. He's away for like 5 days. Now that is a prime example of when I would be like, right, pace to myself, cut and shirt, I'm going to go full goblin mode for the next like 4 or 5 days because I'm able to do that. But I'm kind of heading that off at the beginning where I've got a few plans in with friends whilst he's away. I'm booking myself in to go to the Lido. I've got some workout classes booked in. And so, but I wouldn't know to do that without having done the work I have. And so you kind of get a bit more aware of being able to kind of head some of those things off early. Which is going to give you more chance of having a better week.
Yeah.
Bring back to your original point. Some weeks will be bad, some weeks will be good, but you learn to know how to kind of manage and take a bit of ownership of whether you're going to have a good week or a bad week by doing a little bit of work in the beginning.
Yeah, you're really right. I mean, this year, I was talking to somebody yesterday, actually. I said this year there's been a couple of phases where for weeks I've just been on that sort of downward spiral. It's taken me a little while to work out what's happening and a little bit longer to work out part of the reason for that downward spiral is because I didn't have the plans. I didn't have the things coming up to look forward to. And even if you're not kind of thinking, I'm so excited about going and doing that in the future, just knowing there is a thing that's there is really important because it shows subconsciously it's telling you are planning for the future. And that's how I feel like I'm more engaged with the world when there is a thing that I'm working towards. It could be a tiny little thing like, I don't know, a football training session for my daughter, or it could be going away with some mates from uni and catching up with them for the first time in 12 months, but just lots of those little things can kind of accumulate to have a huge impact on how you're feeling now. And as soon as you realize that, it's powerful.
It really is. And I'm someone who I'm definitely more of a homebody. Like I love nothing more than like my home. But I know that if I'm there too much, it has a negative impact on me. So I just like plan as long as I've got some kind of social activity in once a week that is making sure I'm getting out and that's becoming more and more like wanting to do that, but I have to make sure that I pre-plan for that, because if I leave myself to the last minute with a week with like nothing to do, then I'll fall back into that place. I am also lucky in the fact I have a partner who's very opposite to me in that respect and loves to be out and about all the time and stuff, and he helps me ensure that I kind of like we've got things planned in and we're out just like enjoying our lives, because he knows what I can be like, especially after 11 and a half years of being together.
Yeah, he's got your number. Awesome. So, I mean, that feels like one of the kind of potential sort of light bulb moments that we'll come back to later on in the conversation. Mm-hmm. But before we kind of go to that question, can you talk us through your kind of your journey, your mental health journey, and with this, start wherever you want to start. If this is something you kind of trace back to childhood, if this is something that was more recent, whatever it is, just talk us through where you first started to kind of realize that you were experiencing challenges and what that journey's been like since.
Yeah, so I think I have always experienced challenges to some extent, but it's definitely been a journey in learning why. I've always had this kind of thing in my head of feeling like I've built wrong because everything else seems easier to everyone than it does to me. Whether it's like, going out and being social, or like getting like anxiety when like wanting, like booking a holiday, like there are just certain simple things in life that have always seemed harder for me than others. And it kind of coalesced to a point over the past year where I found myself feeling very depressed and just very like apathetic towards life in general. And so I'd made the decision to like go to therapy this year, and I've been doing it for about 4 months now. And he's been really good in helping me to investigate where it all comes from. And the one of the key kind of like stems of it definitely comes from like childhood. I was like bullied as a kid because I was, like I spoke a bit differently. I was more effeminate than the other kids. And so I was very much kind of like othered, like growing up until about the age of like 15, 16. And that has all kind of fed in to this kind of deep feeling that I have, which is very common among a lot of like gay men, which is this feeling of shame. And that feeling of shame is kind of very much embedded within me. And it's very much a source of kind of anxiety, the feeling of kind of like undeserving. And so it's been kind of like a very long process over the course of, like 20, 25 years of this kind of feeling there, which I didn't really have the words to articulate or really understand it before. But through going to therapy, I've definitely kind of learnt where it comes from, how it contributes to these different factors in my life, and learning the kind of behaviors I've taught myself in order to deal with that kind of like isolating of myself served me well when I was at school and being bullied and just trying to protect myself. But those behaviors don't serve me now as an adult who's kind of like out in the world and is like great at his job and has like a good circle of friends. Those behaviors don't serve me anymore, but they're kind of my comfort blanket that I run to if I'm ever feeling stressed or down or whatever. And so, learning where that all comes from has definitely like really helped me. So the journey has definitely been like a really long one, and it's one I'll probably continue to be on. Probably for like the rest of my life. I don't think I'll be in therapy for the rest of my life. My bank balance is certainly hoping that I'm not in it for the rest of my life, because therapy ain't cheap, but it's the probably some of the best money I've ever spent. And so it's definitely, yeah, it's been a really, really long journey, and I'm still discovering things like about myself and different aspects of shame and kind of depression, and where some of my anxieties come from, and why I feel a certain way in certain situations. It's kind of just all feeding into this kind of discovery of who I've been, who I am now, and kind of giving me the tools I need to kind of like enact some kind of like positive change, which, if I'm being completely honest, I don't think anyone can do truly alone. But I feel like men are very much taught to not talk about their feelings, so they do keep it bottled in and just try and deal with it all on their own. Which, in my experience, and from myself and from like my circle of like male friends, doesn't really work that well. You need an outlet. You need to be able to like voice these things to like make sense of them. So yeah, to cut a very long answer short, like TLDR, yes, it's been a very long journey for about 25 years, and it started when I was a kid being bullied.
And that context, I completely get that. If you've been subject to that kind of those kind of behaviours from people for that long, it's gonna have deep, deep influence on how you evolve as a person. Question for you: You what was the kind of the catalyst now for you going to see a therapist? Why like 4 months ago did you see a therapist when this had been like so long in its kind of gestation for you from that experience? I know obviously the child, I guess the childhood flashback is something that become more and more apparent to you through having those conversations with a therapist. But what was it that kind of made you decide that now was the right time to do it?
I think for years I've been like modeling through and kind of having like good periods and bad periods. I was able to try and kind of like keep it contained where I could. But it was over the last year, I just wasn't able to contain it. It was like very apparent like from like my friends and my partner, and it was a really honest conversation that like me and my boyfriend had, which was him sitting me down and saying how much it is like affecting me, like the not just me but the world around me. It's like affecting him, and therefore it's affecting our relationship, and how we like live our lives, and being very honest about like I owe it to myself to go and kind of like try and deal with this, but I also owe it to the people around me, because I can't be the best like boyfriend, the best friend, or the best son, or the best person at work. I can't be any of those things if I'm not trying to be the best version of myself I can be for me. And so it was a conversation with him about 6 months ago, that was really the catalyst for me being like, yeah, enough is enough now. I've got to go and try and like explore this and get some help for it.
And by all means, with any of these questions, tell me to piss off in the nicest possible way. Mm, how was it manifesting itself in terms of your relationship with other people? Because I think that this is a really helpful thing for somebody who's not had that realization yet to kind of maybe see in their own behaviors.
Mm-hmm. So for me, it was very much, friends wanting to meet up or like reaching out and me just like not responding to messages. It was, chilling out with my boyfriend and not being very present, on my phone a lot, or not very much being present in the conversation, not putting effort into like organizing plans or date nights. It was very much this kind of it was very obvious to other people about my kind of just like detachment, present in body but not in mind. And so it was a combination of those kind of factors, which is how it kind of like manifested. I was also kind of like shorter with people. I feel like I was having like a shorter temper, feeling like angry a lot more quickly where I didn't really need to. Um, I think that born out of like a kind of like a frustration about the whole situation. So that's kind of how it like manifested for me.
Yeah. And whilst you're trying to hold down job, relationships, there comes a point where I think, well, certainly in my experience, it was at a subconscious level where I realized that I was doing those things, but I didn't seek help. I didn't take positive action. I just got more frustrated about the fact that I was causing the problem. That makes sense.
Yeah.
You sort of double down, you get into this spiral where you realize enough, you realize something's going on, that you are culpable for it in some sense, but that just makes it worse. That doesn't necessarily lead to you finding a solution or seeking help. Is that how your experience panned out?
Yeah, it was. And it was always like, oh, I'll focus on it from Monday. It's always like next Monday.
Yeah,
If even if it's by like I'm feeling bad by like Wednesday or whatever, just like I'll wait till Monday to
yeah,
kind of like get a handle on it. And it's like just try and get a handle on it now.
yeah.
Um, and so it was definitely the kind of me like procrastinating around it, but then also kind of like a fear of kind of, okay, I start doing this and start exploring it more, what is it going to reveal? And it definitely has revealed some things that are kind of like scary, and that are definitely from like my teenage years that like are kind of some things that I'd have blocked out, and that I'm exploring more now. But I'm definitely doing it, I would say, very much like baby steps with it. There's one thing that I've learned through therapy is to like be making progress, but you don't have to go from 0 to 60 overnight. Like you can, do it at the pace that feels good for you, and kind of because like any progress is better than no progress.
And I also
So,
think
yeah.
trying to make progress is better than the alternative, because if you're not even engaging with the idea of wanting to make progress, because some of those therapy sessions that you have, and again, this is certainly based on my experience, you sit there and you feel like, well, that was a waste of time, because you think, I'm going to get something out of each of these sessions. I'm going to come away, but it doesn't work like that. Some sessions you'll come away with a really clear sense of what has happened. Other times you might end up going to 3 sessions in a row before the penny finally drops. But
Yeah.
the fact that you are trying to do something, which is the thing that matters the most, isn't it? Rather than the short-term quick gain that you might.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's be honest, if therapy is something that someone wants to do, I'm not going to lie, the first like few weeks, it's awkward. It's a complete stranger that you are kind of like exposing yourself to. And that kind of like that just exposure, like as a man, there is an intimacy there with kind of exposing yourself to somebody else in that way, which is very much a fear, I think, especially with a lot of guys. And it does feel kind of awkward and a bit uncomfortable. And with that, if there's just like a quick piece of advice I can give to anyone who is thinking of doing therapy, is to like do your research into someone who you think would be good. You could go to a session with somebody. Like I've had it before, where you've had a session just like, this is not the person for me. For me, when I was going to it this time, I was very much looking for someone who like had experience with depression, who themselves was a gay man, because they would be able to relate to like what I was going through. And so to find someone who's like on your wavelength. And also, if you are going to do it, be honest in there. Like I had a friend who went and they were like, how's therapy going for you? And I was like, it's going really well, actually. Like I've been going for a while now. Seeing my therapist have a really good rapport. I feel like, I feel comfortable with them. And I'm finding it really helpful. And they were like, I didn't feel like it really helped me. I went for a few weeks, but it wasn't really helping. And I said to them, I was like, well, were you like, upfront with everything, and they just didn't know what to do, or what was it? And they're like, well, no, I wasn't like fully honest with them. And I'm like, well, that's your first mistake, because how can they help if you're not kind of giving? You kind of got to be all in with it. You don't have to be all in straight away, but you do have to be honest about what you're going through, how you're feeling, because they're not there to judge. There's and that's the thing, because you will say things sometimes where you were like in the wrong in a situation or whatever, and there's like instant feeling of like, I don't want to feel judged, or I want them to like me, which was definitely my friend's thought process. They didn't want to feel judged about some of the decisions they've made. And I'm like, they're not going to judge you. They're literally here to help you understand why you made those decisions. But if you're not honest, it's just there isn't any point in going, really.
Yeah, it's so true. And I'd say another thing is, because I've heard people talk about therapy experiences, and you can't focus on trying to work out what you think the therapist wants you to say.
No, exactly.
So there's the dishonesty, like the intentional holding back or the reluctance to kind of open up, but trying to give them an answer that you think is what they are searching for is absolutely wasting your time just as much. You're not there to please them. You're there to kind of understand more about yourself, and
yeah,
I'm guessing the process is crazy.
And a good therapist will hold you to account on that as well. Like mine asked me a question yesterday, and he was like, "Why do you think you feel undeserving?" And I was like, "Well, I think everyone feels undeserving to a certain extent." And he was like, "That's not what I asked. That's not what I asked." It's like, it's not about everyone else. He's like, "I don't care about everyone else." He was like, "Why do you think you're undeserving?"
Yeah.
And like made me go down that path, like holding my hand while doing it, but like and so yeah, a good therapist will always hold you to account when you try to scare, because I can do that. It's like, well, I think if you look at like society as a whole, and he's like, I don't, he's you know, he's basically like, he's like, I don't give a crap about society. He was like, I give a crap about you. And I was like, I'm asking you this question, not what your thoughts on like the patriarchy are or any of this. He was like, come on. He was like, why do you think this? So he's good at that.
Yeah, yeah, no, that is really important. You're right. Therapists will do that. They will hold you to account, and they will make sure that it's like when you go for a job interview, and someone says, "Can you give me an example of when you did X?" And you say, "Well, we had this challenge." It said, "No, no, not we, you." Okay.
Yeah.
So I was involved in this discussion with a group where we were trying to deal with this as, no, no, you, not we, you. And
Yeah.
it's so important that, if you once you've made the decision that you want to give it a go, as you said, you need to be willing to go all in on it. Find
Yeah.
peace, find the right person. You don't have to go in and spill your guts immediately. You can kind of build your confidence and trust with them, but go into it knowing that that is the best and the quickest way for you to start feeling better, and for you to start making progress and building those skills to carry you through the next phase of your life as well. Um,
Yeah, for sure. And the hard truth of it is only you can make that decision as well. It's like you can have a catalyst, kind of like I did when I had a conversation with my partner, but it is ultimately down to you to take the responsibility to do that. That is like the kind of hard truth of it. You are responsible for yourself and how you feel, and how you make others people feel and how you react to situations. So you have a responsibility to kind of go and do what is ultimately best for you, for sure.
and it's empowering. That's I went through, not currently in therapy, but I've been through therapy for months at a time at various stages over the last 6.5, 7 years. Um, there isn't a silver bullet that comes from this. There is that moment where you suddenly go, oh, I get it. But again, as we were saying at the start, there's lots of little things that you will learn about yourself along the way that will help you to manage yourself and your responses to things in a slightly different way, which is more helpful and healthier for you in the longer run. And that is absolutely an inadvertent segue into the fourth question I have, which is, what have been those kind of key light bulb moments, those realizations that you've had along the way? And some of this may predate therapy sessions, but what have been the key points where you realized, I need to start doing this, or just as importantly, I need to stop doing that?
I think one of the key points is when I first moved to London. I moved to London about 11 years ago, and I was very much in a place of kind of like, all my friends were staying there. They were starting to like, get married, and was very much seeing kind of like the life path they were on. And being from like a small town in the Midlands, and and being like basically the only gay person I knew, like I didn't really see like a place for myself there. And I was definitely starting to feel like fall into like bad habits, and I had a bit of I was a bit lost as to what I was going to do next. And then it was just so happened that like an opportunity came up in London for like at Republic Publishing, and we that was kind of like a moment where I was like, it was definitely very much a fork in the road of being like, okay, I can either stay here and kind of be down and watch all my friends do these things while I kind of just like still stay at home and don't really know what to do, or I can just go and just like try something else and go like live my life, and go do something like just for me. And so that was definitely a real key turning point for me. And I think definitely, obviously, this year has been like was like a real kind of like moment of like clarity of, I think, understanding how deep some things go and how so much of these things come from like childhood and school. At least they do for me anyway. Because I didn't have a great experience at school. I had a wonderful childhood in mind. Like my parents are amazing, and I'm lucky that I've got like a really great family. But so much of it is this kind of like these uh, kind of that making that decision to go to therapy this year was a real kind of eye opener in terms of how deep some of this goes. That it's not like, oh, I've just been feeling depressed for like a few years and like it's because of just like life and society and whatever. It's just like, oh no, this is like completely like, something that's been like really endemic to like who I am, and it's like very like deep rooted. So that was like a real eye opener for me.
And if we look at specifically within the context of the therapy sessions, example I give of where I suddenly had a bit of a oh moment was first time my therapist mentioned CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, and I basically I won't go to the full story because it's boring, but I had bitten my nails since I was a small child. It's an anxiety thing, always biting my nails to the point where they would bleed. And that was happening when I was in corporate life. And I would go to the medical cabinet and I would get plasters to put over them so that. But then I went into meetings and I was thinking, oh my god, they're going to look at my nails because they're an absolute mess. And it was predominating everything that I felt about the meetings, and it was influencing how I felt about whether I should have been in there, what value I was offering, all this kind of stuff. And the CBT experience was basically talking me through what would happen if I didn't bite my fingernails and the knock-on effect of that. And I basically went from probably 30 plus years of chewing my nails to oblivion to not chewing my nails ever again, like that.
Yeah.
CBT. Have you? I appreciate you've been only doing this for 4 months now, but have there been any specific things that those moments where you've suddenly gone, oh, that I could do that straight away?
I don't know if there's been any specific moments like that. When I was, I think it was like it was in my third or fourth session, and when my therapist talked to me about shame, I was like, oh, okay. Because in the gay community, we're very good at talking about like the shame that like gay men feel because of like the way society is viewed like homosexuality. But it's always one of those things that we're very good at like talking about. It's like, yeah, it's a real issue, like in the community, blah, blah, blah. I don't think it really applies to me. I don't feel shameful in my day-to-day life. Like, I definitely don't feel shameful when I'm like,
push the shame.
When it's like 3 a.m. and I'm in like some random club in East London, and I definitely don't feel shameful then. And like, I'm kind of like, when I'm at festivals, like with all my gay friends, definitely don't feel shameful. But when we were talking about it, oh God, no, it is there. It is there for me. And I had no idea it was. But then when we were talking about it, I was like, oh God, it is actually really there for me and it manifests in some ways. So that was like a real turning point. And then one of the things I was really struggling with was, this kind of like isolationist, like not responding to friends and stuff like that. And my therapist said something, he was like, just do it in a way that feels kind of so easy for you to do. And so one of the things he was like, just reach out to one person a week, one of your friends a week. That's all you have to do. And I've kept that since. And, you know, ensuring I'm kind of making the effort with my friends, just like once per week, check in, or just saying, hey, sending a meme, whatever it is. And then from that, then getting plans in the calendar, whether we're going to go for dinner or whatever, has all of that has kind of like snowballed in a way where it doesn't feel intimidating to me to do that now. And that we were actually chatting yesterday about like the wedding and then the plans I've got coming up over the next like couple months and stuff. You don't always feel the change happening at the time, but then you have a moment kind of like I did this week where it's all kind of coalesced at once, where I've been like feeling really good, and you know, I've got plans in the calendar. I'm taking myself on a solo trip in like September, and you know, kind of life is just like feeling like pretty good right now. And then, which is also a good thing to, you know, what we were saying earlier, like it feels good this week. It might not feel great next week. And I kind of have a natural kind of preparedness for that now. And that when it feels good, it doesn't mean the work stops. You have to continue doing it. It's not like, oh, I feel all right now. Okay, great, I've job done. It's like, no, that's the first. That's actually when you need to. The almost like some of the hard work begins, and that like you've got to be consistent with it. But that was a real nice little realization for me from him, and that like, I can message a friend once a week. That's not daunting at all, and that has naturally just coalesced and kind of snowballed to where I feel like I'm a lot more like I'm a lot more active, more of an active kind of participant in my like relationships now. Whereas before I was feeling lonely and quite like passive. Whereas, you know, friendships are a joint effort. And if I'm not putting in the work, there's no reason they should. And so, you know, I kind of like, if I want these kind of like friendships to blossom, then it's up to me to make sure I'm putting in as much work as they are. And I wasn't doing that for a while. But just doing something as simple as messaging once a week is like it really kind of like helped me with that.
I have two questions that come from that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one is an observation. I think you're absolutely right about the need to put in the groundwork and that recognition that you have of, just because I feel good today, it doesn't mean that I stop doing the things that got me to the point where I feel good. It's like when you read a book. I mean, let's go for this one here.
Mm-hmm.
So I bought this book ages ago because I was always feeling knackered. The problem is I was feeling too knackered to concentrate on reading that. So
Right.
I only got that far through it. Right. So
Yeah.
when you buy a book about stuff like this, or people recommend you a book when you're feeling really shitty, that's not when you need it.
Mm.
You need it when you've managed to get yourself out of that hole and you can suddenly go into more of a sponge mode where you're able to absorb stuff, because at the time that you probably really need it, you're already saturated.
Yes.
You need to have an opportunity to squeeze some of that water out of the sponge so that you're ready to then go, right, now is the time that I'm ready to absorb this advice, to look at other perspectives, because I'm not feeling overwhelmed anymore. So that was the first thing I wanted to say. The second question for you is, you talked about kind of proactively messaging a mate once a week and that snowballing. Are you aware of whether or not the experience that you've been through has actually started to influence how you approach your friends and your family? Like, for example, has it affected how you listen to them?
I'm definitely, and one thing I have been working on is definitely being more like present within like a conversation, trying to, I mean, I work in social media. I do my own artwork. My phone is never far from me, but I definitely trying to make an effort to not be. And sometimes I fail at it, and other times I'm better at it. But trying to definitely make more of an effort to ensure that like my phone is face down or somewhere else, and if we're having a conversation with someone, I'm actively like engaged in it and participating. So it's definitely, I think, helped with that, because what's the point in kind of like making a plan or meeting a friend if you're just going to be on your phone the whole time. And so I think it's definitely like had an effect there. And it also, before, for some reason, it felt like a very daunting task just to kind of message people or like make plans. And it definitely it feels less like that now. It feels more just like, just part. Not always. Sometimes to still feel a bit daunting, but I'm learned more to kind of like, you know, get over that a little bit. I was saying it feels sometimes like there's this scared inner child within me that is kind of like afraid of like, well, what if they don't actually like you, or what if they say no, or what if they don't respond back, or whatever. And that inner child is with me in so many different aspects of my life. And when I was at the Lido yesterday, I was like, oh, I might go for a dip, and there was that inner child in me being like, oh no, but what if you don't like it, or what if like you're not feeling as confident in your body and you have to go over there with like your top off, just all these little things. And it feels like he always has me on like a little leash sometimes. And one thing I've learned is to kind of like not be so much at loggerheads with him, and kind of like try and kind of calm and be like, look, it's going to be fine, it's going to be all right, and kind of just like pacify him a little bit. So yeah, sorry, I probably went off on a bit of a tangent, but that's kind of like what the one of the tools I use when it does crop up sometimes in terms of feeling daunting or anxious or whatever. It's like I know where it comes from, and sometimes he overrides me, and that's fine, but he doesn't override me as much as he used to.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Internal monologues. It's the people often talk about it as kind of asking themselves, what is the worst that could happen?
Yeah.
And then, okay, well, how likely is it that that's actually going to happen? And that's to talk yourself through that anxious response to certain situations. You go, okay, well, it will probably be fine. So now I'm more willing to give it a go, as opposed to becoming inert and just like stopping and go, I'm not sure what to do here. I don't feel like I've got the bravery to. And I completely resonate with that. Like going to a swimming pool and go, oh, well, hang a minute. What about if I suddenly feel like I'm not as muscly, or I've got a bit of a dad bod, or whatever it is? What about if everyone else starts looking at that? It's like a teenager.
Yeah.
Do that all the time. Like, oh, I'm not doing that. I'll be so embarrassed if I do that. And as you get older, you realise, well, that's silly. If you didn't do things because you think other people might be paying attention and saying things behind your back, you'd never do anything.
Yeah, exactly. And it's such a strange thing with stuff like that, specifically with around like body image, because we all have our own body hang-ups. But I don't know anyone. I mean, I could be wrong, but I'm never, if I'm at like, say, if I'm at the Lido or anything, I'm looking at anyone else's body and judging them. You might see like a good body and be just like, God, I wish I had that body. But if someone, say, doesn't have like what we'd call like a traditionally like aesthetic body or something, I'm not looking at it and judging them ever. So, and I don't think anyone is, but we all feel like that's going to happen to us. So it's definitely it's very odd. One actually thing, and that actually did change my perspective on this a bit. And if anyone is ever lucky enough to go to Japan, I really recommend going to one of their onsens out there, because I don't know if you've ever been to a Japanese onsen, but they're basically like hot springs, hot baths. Some of them are outside, some of them are inside. They're separated by gender, and you go in and it's just you're completely butt naked, and for someone who like is struggles to like get in Brockwell Lido with like my top off, like, or sometimes on a sunny day, the idea of that doesn't actually bother me whatsoever. And so when I went to a Japanese onsen, and you got every kind of different kind of like body type and what you could think of, they were just there chilling, enjoying the hot water. There's like dads with their fathers in there. They've got such a different like perspective on body image and all that kind of stuff out there, and it's such a great experience to do. So if anyone else does have any hang-ups with stuff like that, my solution for that is go to Japan and go to an onsen.
Well, that's we'll look for a lower budget option than that, perhaps.
Yeah, I'll see. But this is the thing; it's so interesting between like Eastern and Western culture. They don't care about for Japan in what is probably considered, still in many ways a repressed and kind of prudish nation in terms of like public nudity with like a health spa or something does not cross their mind. It's just ingrained in their culture from like a child that they go to the onsen with their family and that's how they relax, and it's and everything like that. But the idea of like, and it's so interesting with like Western culture, sex is so put out there for everywhere and everyone to see in all our like pop culture, but the idea of like being naked at like a spa couldn't possibly. It's just so interesting, like the kind of dichotomy of that. Yeah, it's very, very odd.
Yeah, it is. It's weird, and also like Scandinavian culture as well, because that's much closer to sort of Japanese attitudes to nakedness, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. I tell you, it's the UK and the US that's got it wrong.
Yeah,
in my opinion, it's just like they lose their pearls over a nipple. It's just like, come on, get a grip, like.
So, with images of nipples now in the minds of any British and American viewers or listeners to this, not the Japanese. Question 5, Martin, is if somebody comes to you today and they've been through a similar experience to you, what's the most important thing or the most important things based on your lived experience that they could do to help themselves?
I think if you can afford therapy, I would say explore that option. I understand not everyone is in the position to afford it, but there are also great like free like helplines out there, and there's help you can get through like your GP, the NHS, and if you can't do that or you don't feel ready to do anything like that, I would say find a trusted friend that you could like talk to about this stuff. I think just the mere act of just like talking about how you're feeling, or if you're not ready to talk about how you're feeling, ask someone else how they're feeling and just try and get that little bit of dialogue going, I think can be really helpful. And in terms of another practical solution, I would say is think like one small thing that you kind of like want to change or work on and just focus on that for the time being. It can be really overwhelming when you think, well, I want to get fitter. I like want to be doing better in my job. I want to be like making more friends. But when you try and do it all at once, you just end up doing too much and then you regress. So baby steps and just try and pick like, one thing to do. They always say that, they always say, I've read somewhere that like it only takes like 3 or 4 months to kind of introduce like a habit that you can keep. And don't wait for like a New Year's resolution or anything like that. Try and not put too much pressure on yourself. But one thing that's helped me with habits in the past is that period between like September to like Christmas. That's a perfect amount of time to introduce like a new habit and be consistent. And it's enough time to see the effects of that, to see progress and change, but without it feeling so overwhelming that it's like a New Year's resolution or anything like that. So if, we're coming, probably in the time now where it's good to start thinking about what you want that to be. So you can just do one small thing, even if it's just like once a week, and you want a good period to see how that's going to make you feel. Like you'll be able to see the effects and feel the effects of that by Christmas. So that's a piece of advice I would give people.
And that's kind of identifying small things, small changes that you can make. I've
Yeah.
example like in previous conversations, but when I was absolutely at my lowest step, progress for me was first making sure that I got out of bed on a and then it was getting dressed. Once I get out of bed thing, it was now I can get dressed. And it was I can go outside, and before you know it, and to people that haven't experienced this, you'll feel like it's completely ridiculous. But when you get to that stage where you feel completely helpless, doing something as simple as saying to yourself, my first challenge is I'm going to get out of bed every day for the next 5 days. That's big, because you do that, you're going to get out of bed every day from that point onwards. And that becomes a habit, and then you can add the next thing on top of that. So it doesn't matter how small a thing you think it is, if you're not doing it at the moment, start doing and make it easy for you to see the progress that you're making. It's a huge difference maker.
For sure. One of I've read somewhere before as well that like one of the best things you can do for kind of like your immediate kind of like mental state and for like starting a day well is to make your bed. Get out, make your bed. It doesn't take long, and you get immediate kind of like gratification from it. And you know, it's a good way of just like, you know, they always say like, you know, tidy house, tidy mind, blah blah blah. Whereas, yeah, that's just like a really quick way of being able to kind of take something that's like messy and make it better, and that will kind of set your day off well. So that's always a good one. That's the first thing I do when I get up in the morning is make my bed.
Yeah, no, that's a really sound one. Really sound. Martin, thank you so much for doing this today. Really, really appreciate it. If somebody hears this episode and they want to get in touch with you, is it okay for them to do that?
100%. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. I'll make sure that you're tagged in the posts when we put the episode out so people can find you easily, and I'll drop your profile URLs in the description as well so they can yeah, thank you again, Martin. It's so important, and I know this is going to resonate with other people, and this is a really valuable addition to the bank of chats that we're trying to build with Good Enough Chats. Thank you also to the audience for joining us for this conversation. If you found it helpful, please let other people know about it. If there's a specific person that you know who seems like they might be going through something similar, put this directly in front of them, because this is how these conversations can reach the right people and have real impacts. If you find the podcast interesting, one of the other things that you could do that would be super helpful for us is leave a review. If you're hearing this on Spotify, if you're hearing this on Apple Podcasts, leave a review. By all accounts, it doesn't matter what you say. It's the star rating that helps to get it in front of people. So 5-star rating, invaluable in getting this in front of more people who might need to hear it too. That's it for this episode. We will be back again soon with another episode of Good Enough Chats. But in the meantime, take care of yourself. We'll see you soon. Thanks.